Welcome back to Shop Cuts. This is our series on building shaker style cabinet doors. This is part 2. Part 1 we covered preparing all of our stock, ripping it down and cutting the length to all our pieces that we need for our doors. In this part we're going to come to the router table and do our machining on all of our boards. We'll be cutting the cope cut on our rails as well as the pattern cut on all the pieces on one side. And then by the end of this video, we will be assembling our new doors. So stick around. Alright, we got my cope cutter set up to the correct height according to the manufacturer's instructions. And I'm going to run a test piece through and make sure that I have the right thickness of the tenon on the end. And then we'll adjust it if we need to. And if we don't need to, then we will make a cut on our setup block. So let's give it a test cut. The panels that we're using are true 1/4 inch thick, so my tenon needs to be 1/4 inch, and I'm just slightly over, which is exactly where I want it. So this is going to work perfect. I'm going to go ahead and run my setup block through, and then we'll have a record of our cope cut. And it's always important to use a wood push block or backer to avoid tear out of the material on your finished piece. Perfect. Exactly what we want. And I'll set that aside and we'll use that again for our next setup after we run all of our rails through here. Okay, we got all of our cope cuts made on all of our ends here, and we also made it on our setup block. So I'm going to use some more scrap and set up the pattern cut, which is the groove and the pattern that goes along the edge, and we'll get that set up and run. We'll run all the pieces this time. This was just the rails, so next time we'll run the rails and the stiles. Okay, so we got our setup block cut with our pattern cut, as well as our cope cut. And on the Sommerfeld sets, you always run your pieces through face down, so the good face would go down on your table. And one reason is if you reference, you'll always reference off the face of the door. So if you have a slight difference in the thickness of the wood, which in this case we do, it's not much, but the difference is on the back side and it's not on the front. So it produces a nice clean, finished, smooth panel. Here's a piece of the MDF. We use 1/4 inch MDF for the panel. And it gives us a preview of how it's going to look when it's finished. So we'll go through and we will cut the rest of our pattern cuts on all of our rails and stiles, and then we'll be ready to cut some panels and assemble the doors. Alright, I've got all my sizes for all my panels for all the doors here. I did a quick optimization online. There's a lot of tools online for optimizing your sheet goods if you put in all your different measurements, and we'll get to work cutting those up. And we got all of our panels cut out, and again they're numbered to go with the corresponding door, so we don't mistake or have to do a bunch of measuring and figuring out what goes to what. So keep it simple and keep it organized, and next we'll start putting together some doors. Alright, we got all of our panels cut out and got them labeled with the correct number that corresponds with each door. We're going to start assembly. Pretty straightforward. Glue our rails here. Gotta be careful not to get too much glue up here by the profile, because it will tend to squeeze out onto your panel. Makes it difficult to clean up, and if you're staining, or it could actually block the color from staining. These are paint grade cabinets here, and I'm using a 1/4 inch MDF panel in the middle, so it doesn't need to have any allowance for expansion But if it was a solid wood or solid material, you'd want to allow for expansion in this. They make little space balls, that's what they call them, little rubber balls that you can stick in there in the grooves and keep that panel centered, but still allows the wood to expand and stretch as the different seasons and humidity changes. As it is with the MDF panel, I usually cut them about an 1/8 inch shorter on both directions that I need, and that way it's relatively easy to get it set in there and not fight it too much. Bones ringing. So, and I also put a little bit of glue in my groove here, which is not necessary, but I do it just to keep the panel from kind of rattling or moving around. Get my other one here. Okay, so from here, after this dries, I'll go run it through the drum sander and do a rough sanding on it. After that, we'll go over to bore the hinge holes for the hinge placements. And then after that, we'll do a final sanding and touch up any little areas that might need some attention. So hang around and we'll get, I'll get the rest of these doors assembled off the camera and we'll come back and start sanding some doors.